Good evening. Welcome to this Democratic primary debate in the race for controller of New York City. I'm Errol Lewis, political anchor here at Spectrum News NY1. I'm joined by Brian Lehrer of WNYC Gothamist and Alyssa Katz of the news organization The City. Starting this Saturday, early voting will be underway in New York City, with primaries being held in key races beyond this one, including for mayor, public advocate, and the city council. Primary day itself is on June 24th.
So tonight, you'll hear from the two leading Democratic candidates running for city comptroller. The seat is currently held by Brad Lander, who is running for mayor. Tonight's debate is brought to you by the New York City Campaign Finance Board. That's the city agency that administers the public matching funds program. It's also sponsored by Spectrum News NY1, WNYC Gothamist, and The City, and Spectrum Noticias, and our co-sponsors, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY, the Center for New York City and State Law at New York Law School, and the Museum of the City of New York. And you can watch tonight's debate without a paywall on NY1.com. It's also being broadcast on WNYC Radio and the Spectrum News YouTube page, and in Spanish on Spectrum Noticias and YouTube.
Before we get started tonight, let's run through what a city comptroller does. The comptroller is the city's chief financial officer, a watchdog who keeps an eye on spending and looks for waste and mismanagement in government. The role often serves as a balance on the mayor, at times coming into conflict with City Hall. The comptroller also oversees the city's 5 public pension funds, and the comptroller is a politically prominent position, with many running for higher office.
The two candidates joining us tonight met a polling or fundraising threshold established by the Campaign Finance Board in order to take part in tonight's debate. Justin Brannan is a city councilman who represents parts of Brooklyn, and Mark Levine is the Manhattan Borough president. Now for the rules. The rules that you see on your screen have all been agreed to by the candidates. Each candidate will deliver an opening statement of up to 60 seconds. Answers to our questions must generally be limited to 60 seconds with a chance for rebuttals. And both candidates will get to ask their opponent one question. We're going to begin with opening statements. The order was determined by a random drawing this morning. We'll begin with Mr. Brannan. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and thank you to our host for having this important debate. I'm Justin Brannan, city councilman from Southern Brooklyn. I grew up working class. My mom's a teacher. My dad was a salesman. My wife's a small business owner and an art teacher. Growing up, I wanted to be a member of the Ramones, not a member of the city council. I'm a very unconventional elected official. 3 chords that I learned in public school afforded me a career as a world touring musician. I always loved helping people, and I was drawn to public service, so I ran for city council in the neighborhood where I grew up. And I worked my way up in the council to serve now as finance chair, where I oversee the largest municipal budget in the country at $115 billion. I'm running for controller because in a time like this, we need someone who's going to ensure we stand up to the next mayor, whoever it may be, and stand up to Donald Trump. The city is spiraling out of reach for working families, and our budget is the sharpest tool we have to bring down the cost of living for you and your family.
Thank you. And next is Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Errol. This is a moment of enormous challenges for New York. We have the worst housing affordability crisis we've ever faced. We have real public safety challenges, and we face a dire threat from Donald Trump. I'm running for comptroller to take on these fights. What you'll hear tonight from me is a positive agenda of how I'll use the powers of the office to fight and win on behalf of New York. This is what I've done my entire life, since I started my career as a bilingual math and science teacher in the South Bronx. I went on to take on the big banks and found a credit union, together with Errol Lewis, in Uptown Manhattan, that's made $100 million of small loans in the neighborhood. As a city council member, I took on corporate landlords and made New York City the first place in America where tenants now have a right to an attorney in housing court. I've taken on this mayor and the last mayor to win for tenants, for parks, for public health. As comptroller, I'll continue that fight no matter who the next mayor is, and I'll push back against the agenda of Donald Trump.
Okay, thank you very much, candidates. Let's get to it. We'll talk about the role of controller first. In many ways, the most important role of the controller is to act as a check on other elected officials in government, including the mayor and the city council. So there are times when you may have to make a fiscal decision that would be good for the city, but might be bad for you politically. I'd like to ask each of you to give us an example of a public decision that you made knowing that it was going to be unpopular? We'll start with you, Mr. Brannon.
Sure. I mean, look, being an elected official is about sometimes having to take unpopular stances, but for the greater good. And certainly in the city council, where you serve as one member who has to look out for your district, but you're also sum of all parts of one of 51 members, there are times when you have to take votes that you know are good for the city, but might not make sense or might be hard to sell to your own constituents. There have been zoning votes that I've had to take because I want to build more housing that I know, even if it's not in my own neighborhood, that people might be against it. But because we're in a housing crisis, I took those votes. I worked really hard to pass behind the scenes in the room where it happened to get the city of Yes passed. And that was not easy. And there were a lot of people in my neighborhood who maybe didn't want that to happen. But I got it done because it's my responsibility as an elected official to do the right thing, even if at the time it might not be popular.
Okay. And how about you, Mr. Levine?
Again and again, I've taken on tough fights, whether they've been politically popular or not. I supported congestion pricing because we have a transportation crisis in New York with travel times in Midtown and downtown dangerously slow and an underfunded mass transit system. And I stood up and supported this policy even when it was politically unpopular. Now that it's been a resounding success, I feel I've been vindicated in that. And I've made housing my #1 priority as Manhattan Borough President. And we have a problem here because in general, people support housing until it's proposed in their neighborhood. And again, I have stood up to support housing in every neighborhood across the city because this is the crisis of our moment. This is the kind of leader I have been as borough president. It's the kind of leader I'll be as comptroller.
Okay, let me ask you to both briefly maybe give some politically unpopular fiscal advice to the next mayor, starting with you, Mr. Levine.
We've got to add money to our reserve funds. We face a dire threat from Donald Trump and Republican allies in Congress who are making it clear they want to fund massive tax cuts for wealthy people on the backs of cuts to health care and food assistance and housing assistance. I have been fighting to ensure that Mayor Adams puts more money into our reserve funds now in the budget we're about to pass. May not be politically popular, but it's the best way to protect us against cuts going forward.
Okay, Mr. Brannon.
We can't run a city on reserves. So what I would say to the next mayor is you have to deploy money into the communities that need it most. Our city is under attack in the crosshairs by Donald Trump and his gang of maniacs. What we need right now is to make sure our vulnerable communities are taken care of. If you want to add to the reserves, that means you have to cut from somewhere. And this is not a time to cut. We have almost $9 billion in reserves. So for the next mayor, make sure you invest in things that are popular, that working families need, because that's what this moment calls for.
Thank you very much.
Hi, candidates. Good to see you. Mr. Levine, you get the first shot at the question in this round. Donald Trump's name has already been mentioned, and the current comptroller, Brad Lander, recently alerted the public that the Trump administration seized $80 million from one of the city's bank accounts, an action that led to a lawsuit and to a discussion about whether the next comptroller should, quote, Trump-proof city government. So if elected, talk about what you would do to protect the city from adverse actions of the federal government.
Look, Donald Trump is a major threat to the city. He is attacking our people. He's tearing apart immigrant families. He's attacking LGBTQ New Yorkers. He's wrecking our economy. He's literally stealing money out of our budget. I will use the powers of the comptroller's office to fight back on every front. I will organize blue city and blue state pension funds around the country to use our collective power to say to CEOs, you can't give in to the Trump agenda. You can't abandon commitments to diversity or climate or worker safety. I'll fight to make sure that the comptroller has the power to sue the federal government, even if the mayor's law department will not do so. And as I mentioned, I'll fight to make sure we have a budget which gives us a buffer against the cuts ahead by ensuring we add money now to our pension, to our reserve funds. We can do these things. I'll fight on every front to protect New York City's people, our budget, and our economy from the threat that is Donald Trump.
Mr. Brannon, same question.
Look, Donald Trump is an existential threat to our city. His big, beautiful bill, or whatever the hell he calls it, is a heat-seeking missile directed directly at the city of New York and our most vulnerable. In this moment, elected officials at all levels of government, they have a responsibility to stand in the breach between Trump and our most vulnerable. We should not, as politicians, be asking more of the people. The people should be asking more of us. That this is our moment to use the power of our privilege and the privilege of our power to stand up for you. Making sure that we have everything we need, making sure that our city is deploying money into the communities that need it most is our most important priority right now, because Donald Trump is coming for us. So what we need right now is a fighter and not a letter writer. City Hall took 2 weeks to sue back when Elon Musk took $80 million from our account. That is not the urgency of this moment. We need someone willing to stand up and fight, and I'm that guy.
Quick follow-up. Mr. Brannan, you first. Has the Trump administration taken any actions that have helped the city financially?
Not that I've seen just yet, Brian.
Mr. Levine?
No, they are killing tourism, which is our lifeblood. They have taken money out of public health. We've already faced cuts in our health department. They are threatening to cut Medicaid, which 4 million New Yorkers rely on. They're threatening to cut food stamps, which 1.8 million New Yorkers rely on. They're threatening to cut assistance for public housing and rental vouchers. This is devastating. What they are doing is devastating. And I want to say it again. Their goal is to fund tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires by cutting essential services to people in need.
And Mr. Levine, what if Mayor Adams is reelected? And of course, you'll both get this question. You both have said you see him as compromised by his dealings with President Trump. How would you engage with a second Adams administration under President Trump? Mr. Levine.
Look, the comptroller must be totally independent, as I have been totally independent from this mayor and the last. The comptroller must be unafraid to call out the failings of a mayor, and when it's in the interest of the city, to work together with them. This is who I've been, and I will take this approach to the next mayor. I will fight every day for the people of New York City, whatever the political consequences, regardless of my personal interest. Only one goal: to protect the people of the city, to fight for our economy, our budget, and for people being left behind.
Mr. Brannan.
I mean, look, we have an administration right now at City Hall that is absolutely compromised and, if not colluding with the federal government. That is why our mayor is silent on the things that matter most. Yesterday, he went on TV and was scolding and castigating protesters instead of talking to immigrant communities and saying, look, we will protect you when ICE comes to get you for no reason. We have a mayor who's in cahoots with Donald Trump. So you need someone as the next controller who has a record of standing up. It's one thing to say what you'll do in the future, but for me, for the past 3.5 years, I've fought like hell every day against Eric Adams and his crazy budget cuts, and I'll do the same thing with the next mayor.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good to see you. We're also, of course, following the Democratic primary race for mayor, with many candidates who seek to expand government spending. For example, Zohran Mamdani has gained popularity on the campaign trail with help from generous social proposals such as free buses and free childcare. Some people have been warning or concerned that the city can't afford them and that his housing plan alone would exceed the city's debt allowance. Andrew Cuomo wants to increase pension benefits for city workers. Have you evaluated these proposals, and do you feel confident that the city can afford them? So we'll start with you, Mr. Brannan.
Sure. I mean, it's my job as finance chair to figure out how much some of these programs and policies will cost when they are proposed by my colleagues and from others. I think it's a false choice to say that we can't do these big, bold ideas. I think right now, New Yorkers are looking for big, bold, aggressive solutions to the problems that they face every single day. And the fact that people say we don't have the money to do this stuff when it's time to actually help working people tells you a lot. So things like bringing down the cost of living, we need to be throwing everything we can at this. I have a proposal to invest pension funds to create a universal child care system. It's a big, bold idea. The city of New York cannot spend the next 4 years with our head under the bed waiting for Donald Trump to disappear. The laboratory cannot shut down. This is a city that came up with Mitchell-Lama, with Electchester, with Manhattan Plaza. We need to go back to the days of dreaming big and making New York City that city on the hill for everybody.
Okay, Mr. Levine.
Well, we have no choice but to pursue bold solutions because of the scale of our challenges. We're losing families in New York because they can't afford housing here, because they can't afford childcare here. We have real public safety challenges. We've got to invest in solutions. And we can, and I put forward big, bold plans in this campaign. including a proposal to invest some of our pension money in a way that's prudent, which get good returns for our retirees, and would finance the creation as much as 70,000 units of affordable housing. We can do these things. I've also put forward proposals to save money in government through modernizing and efficiency. We can do this by relying less on outside consultants and plow those savings into the services that meet people's needs in this crisis. We can do it by managing our government better, by going big, and by investing in the challenges that people face right now.
A follow-up for Mr. Brannan. Yesterday, you were just essentially endorsed by Mamdani, who is telling his supporters to donate to your campaign. Would that compromise your ability to be a check on his administration should he win?
No, I mean, my job is to be, look, I endorsed Eric Adams, and I also called on him to resign, and I've been calling him out every day for the past 3.5 years. So my job as controller would be to be that independent watchdog. Whether Adrian Adams, who's one of my closest friends, becomes the mayor or not, it's my job to hold them accountable. So the fact that others might be supporting me, it doesn't matter to me. Look, I think anyone right now that is proposing bold solutions to bring down the cost of living in this city, to make life easier for working people, those are people that I want the support of. So I appreciate anyone that supports my campaign who has that same vision.
Mr. Levine, would you care to respond to that?
I just think it's critical that the next comptroller be totally independent, that there not be a perception or reality that the comptroller owes favors to the next mayor, and I am preserving my independence in this campaign. I've been very careful about that because I want to be fiercely independent of whoever is elected mayor. As I have been in my entire career in government, I will continue to fight for people regardless of the political consequences, regardless of who's mayor. This is who I've been and who I will be.
Okay, candidates, let's move to a different topic. 9 of the last 10 controllers ended up running for mayor. Only one, this goes back to the 1950s. Only one of them was successful, and that was Abraham Beam in 1973. Do you have aspirations to seek the mayoralty or other elected office? And do you see that ambition, the need to fundraise and get union support and so on, to be at odds with the controller's role in ensuring fiscal responsibility? We'll start with you, Mr. Levine.
Well, in fairness, Errol, it's a very small sample size. But I'll say this, I'm running for my dream job. Could have run for re-election to borough president. Maybe I could have run for mayor now. But I believe that the office of comptroller is critical, now more than ever, to protect this city. And it's a job that I've been preparing for my entire life, since my days as a public school teacher, since my days founding a community financial institution in uptown Manhattan that's helped thousands of families get access to loans, to start businesses, to buy home computers. Since my days leading in the city council for tenants, securing the right to counsel for every person in the city facing an eviction. I'm ready for this job. This job is important at any time, more important now than ever as we face the threat of Donald Trump. This is why I'm running. It's a job I want and a job I'd be honored to serve in.
And from what you've seen or from how you see the job, would that be at odds with a controller who's seeking higher office?
Look, this job is critical to the functioning of city government, extensive functions. And you need a comptroller who's going to hunker down and do that work, who ensures that our pension funds are well managed, protecting the assets of retirees, who ensures that we're only approving contracts that meet our standards as a city, that ensures we use the power of audit and oversight, and if need be, subpoena power to hold the mayor accountable and every city agency of power accountable. This is a big job with a lot to do, and I'm going to hunker down and do this work on behalf of the people of the city.
Okay, Mr. Brannan.
Look, I'm running for controller because I have the experience, and most importantly, I think in this moment, I've got the guts. I spent the past 3.5 years now serving as finance chair, and that's prepared me for this moment. I also know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to represent a neighborhood that's far away from City Hall. I know what it's like to have some neighborhoods used to getting the full loaf of bread, while neighborhoods in the outer boroughs are used to fighting over crumbs. And I think in this moment, people across the country are going to suddenly start to need to know who their local controllers and treasurers are because of the threat from Washington. And you need a fighter in this moment. So I'm not running for mayor. I'm not interested in running for mayor. I'm interested in running for controller. I want to be your controller. I'm not going to lie to you and say I've been dreaming about being the controller since I was 4 years old running a lemonade stand. I'm running for controller because I have the experience, I've got the guts, and I want to fight for you and your family and the neighborhoods that you call home.
Okay, and as far as the the trend that we've seen, 9 of the last 10 controllers running for higher office, does that impair their ability to be effective and independent, do you think?
I don't think it impairs their ability. I think it might color the lens a little bit, because you never want to take gratuitous shots just for the sake of taking gratuitous shots. And I think once you decide you're running for higher office, then suddenly everything takes on that color and that tone. So I think you want to be independent, and you need to be only accountable to the taxpayers, but you don't want to attack the mayor just because you're looking to take his job.
Okay.
Mr. Brannan, you're up first in this section, and the topic is pension funds, which of course the controller oversees. Pension funds are often targets for social investment or social divestment. As you know, the city has previously divested from tobacco companies and fossil fuel companies, for example. Are you comfortable with the current list of barred investment sectors, and are there any that you would add?
Sure, thank you for the question. You know, I support what the current Chief Investment Officer, Steve Meyer, has said, which is basically we need to have a full assessment, reassessment of our investments, because there's been so much chaos from Washington. I think before the end of the year that needs to happen to ensure that before we get in there and make changes, we know what we're working with and how much we've lost and how much we've gained. But I think your main responsibility as controller is to serve as a fiduciary to the pension funds. It should be quiet, stable, and steady, not making noise, not playing politics with people's money. However, you want to make sure that the investments align with the values of New Yorkers. I put out a real plan to fully divest from Tesla, not because Elon Musk says some crazy things on Twitter, but because he spends his days trying to hurt the very seniors who our pensions help and our seniors rely on. So we should not be investing in people who are doing everything they can to undermine the future of our city, but we also should not be playing politics with people's money.
Mr. Levine.
The job of the comptroller is to protect the retirement assets of 750,000 current and future city retirees, getting good returns. That also means taking the long view. And I firmly believe that companies in sectors like fossil fuels and tobacco are not good long-term investments. That in the case of energy, the future is renewables, and that's where our funds should be invested. There's a win-win potential here, where we invest in companies that prioritize our values because we know they're good for business. It's true for diversity as well. Companies which have boards and leadership and staff which reflect the diversity of America also succeed as businesses and are more profitable in the long term. So we can push for those values as shareholders in every company in America. We can amplify our power by teaming up with Blue City and Blue State pension funds around the country, which collectively control $3 trillion in assets. We can fight for the long term, for the benefit of our country, and most importantly, our retirees.
Mr. Brannan, what about Israel or companies that some advocates say profit off the war in Gaza and want the city to divest from?
Sure. I don't support BDS. I've never supported BDS. It's a personal issue for me. I have family living in Israel, and I don't support that.
Mr. Levine.
Well, we have a globally diversified portfolio, and that should include investments in Israel, including Israel bonds, which have paid solid dividends for 75 years. And we are now the only pension fund in America without that investment. I think prudent management for global diversity should include investment in such assets.
A follow-up question on divestment in general. This was submitted by a listener to my radio show as an alternative to divestment in some things. The listener asks, do you favor holding stock in companies whose policies you disagree with in order to be able to propose shareholder resolutions to change their policies? Are there cases in which you would do that, Mr. Brannan?
Absolutely. I think we need to get much more aggressive with our pension system. As long as you're getting that 7% return for the retirees, you need to get aggressive. Because what we're seeing now is red states, Texas right now is pounding their chest because they got their money managers to completely divest from alternative energy and only divest in oil and gas. With a pension system in New York City that's almost $300 billion, we need to use that leverage for a cleaner future, for a safer future, and we can't be afraid to rattle that saber and say, look, if you're not going to do what we want you to do, we're going to take our money elsewhere. Red states are doing it. We need to have that same killer instinct to grow and protect our pension, but also to ensure that our investments are aligned with our values.
And Mr. Levine.
We have real power here. We own stock in virtually every company in America and virtually every major global company. We are shareholders. We elect the board of directors, and we can use that power to fight for companies which adhere to our values and, I believe, achieve greater longer-term business success. We have an advantage here. Blue cities and blue states control twice the assets of red states. We need to use that power to fight back. This is our moment. With Trump pushing corporate America to abandon diversity, climate, and worker safety, we can use our pension funds to push back.
Thank you both. Errol? Alyssa, I'm sorry.
So next question is about an aspect of how you would manage the comptroller's office. Technology is moving at a rapid pace. Would you use artificial intelligence as part of your work at the comptroller's office? Should city government embrace the use of artificial intelligence or heavily regulate it? And we'll start with you, Mr. Brannan.
Sure. Look, AI is here. AI is coming. We need to make sure that we are leveraging the technology that's available to fix and streamline broken systems, to increase efficiency in our systems, but to make sure that we're not getting to a place where we're firing city workers or we're replacing city workers with machines. So I think there's a lot that can be done with AI, and I think it would be wrong for the city to put our head in the sand and not prepare for this, to think about how we're going to handle it. But I do think there are some opportunities where we can use AI to fix broken systems and to make things more efficient and thereby save a lot of money for taxpayers and for retirees. So I am open to it. It's something that I've been studying on to see what other cities and states are doing. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but we have to make sure that it's not a slippery slope to losing even one city worker.
Mr. Levine.
We are sleepwalking into a period of rapid technological transformation, probably the most rapid in human history. And New York City is doing almost nothing to prepare for a technology that poses both real threats to employment, threats to copyright protection, threats to the proliferation of misinformation, but also a technology which has real positive potential to cure disease, to expand access to health care, to give people new educational and business opportunities. And all that's true inside city government as well. Now, city workers should be full partners in understanding the potentials and threats of this new technology, but it's clear there's already ways where it could help the comptroller's office, for example, in rooting out and early detection of fraud. We can identify bad patterns before they become endemic, and then we can have human workers investigate to root this out. These are the potentials for win-wins that I'll pursue as comptroller.
Thank you.
Okay, candidates, it is time now for the cross-examination. That's when each candidate gets a chance to ask one question of his rival, who will then give one answer. We'll start with you, Mr. Brannan.
Thank you. Borough President, in 2020, you voted to cut the police budget by $1 billion. But at the time, you said the cuts didn't go far enough. In our debate a couple of weeks ago, you said you were not one of those people that felt the cuts didn't go far enough. So could you tell us where you stand today in 2025?
This was the height of the pandemic. New York City faced a severe economic crisis, a fiscal crisis. We had to shift literally hundreds of millions into the health department to fight back against the pandemic. I was chair of the health committee at the time. I knew that all too well. And that meant cuts to almost every department, including the NYPD at that very difficult moment. Now, the big battle there was whether we would vote against the budget in order to extract much deeper cuts, potentially billions, from the NYPD. And I did not vote no on the budget. I voted in favor of the budget because it was a moment of crisis. We needed to keep the city going. We needed to make prudent cuts where necessary. You also voted the same way I did, in favor of that budget. And I think for both of us, it was the right thing to do at that moment.
But do you think, at the time, you said the cuts didn't go far enough? He didn't answer the question.
That's his answer. He gets to ask you a question.
Okay.
We face a terrible housing crisis right now. We had the potential in the City of Yes zoning reform to create as much as 100,000 units. This was really the biggest opportunity in our generation. The council member succeeded in getting his own neighborhood cut out, his own block cut out. I've heard him cite recently flood concerns. The map of what he got cut out doesn't match the flood map. At any rate, this wasn't about basements. This is about additional units in open spaces, in backyards, for grandparents and kids. Why did you do that, and why should people trust you on housing?
Sure. So I was in the room and got City of Yes passed. It was not easy. We only had 31 votes. It wasn't easy whipping those votes, but we knew we needed to build housing. City of Yes allowed us to get 80,000 units of potential housing. The carve-out that happened in one part of my district was because we had a lot of flash flood issues where neighbors were getting a foot of water in their basements. So this was not an area that made sense for ADUs. Look, I'm in the room where these things happen. I passed City of Yes. I worked in the council to make that happen so that we could create 80,000 new units of housing. I've created almost over 3,000 units of housing in my district since I was elected. I think it's one thing to play to the intelligentsia and write things on Substack. It's another thing to actually be in the room and get things done, and that's what I do.
Okay, thank you, candidates. It is time for a quick lightning round. Each candidate will answer our questions with a brief response, generally yes or no. You're going to go first, Mr. Levine. Have you ever, two-part question, have you ever bought crypto, and should New York City invest pension funds in crypto?
I think I own maybe $100 of Bitcoin because I wanted to understand how this new technology works, but it is a speculative asset. It's been swarmed by hucksters, including the President of the United States, who's pushing a meme coin. And so the answer is no, I don't want the pension fund invested there.
Mr. Brannon.
No, the City of New York needs to stay the hell away from crypto. It would be deeply irresponsible to invest in crypto. It's an asset class that is just rife with fraud and fluctuation and volatility.
Have you bought any?
No crypto.
Okay. When's the last time, Mr. Brannon, you were inside a casino?
Oh my God. Probably in Puerto Rico for Somos.
Did you win?
Yeah, but then at the end you always lose.
Mr. Levine.
Ditto, I was at the blackjack table, and I think I was down that night.
Okay. And then, Mr. Levine, do you cook? And if so, what's your favorite dish to cook?
I'm pretty useless in the kitchen. I'm excellent at producing canned food, though.
Okay. Mr. Brannon.
I can order a mean pizza.
Okay.
Mr. Levine, as we continue with the lightning round, do you support Local Law 97 in its current form with its requirement for buildings to reduce their carbon emissions in the next few years?
Absolutely. Climate change is the challenge of our time and the main source of climate change of fossil fuels. The main consumers of fossil fuels are our buildings, actually not our automobiles. So we're not going to get to our goals of carbon neutrality unless we reduce the carbon footprint of our buildings. Local Law 97 will do that. Now, there are co-ops that are struggling right now to meet the investments, and the city and state should do more to help them with tax credits and financial assistance so they can upgrade now to meet the stringent targets of Local Law 97.
Mr. Brannon, any different?
No, I support it, and I believe that if we actually want folks to meet these goals, we have to give them the tools they need to meet these goals. I don't want these co-ops and condos to get fined. I want them to meet the goals of Local Law 97. So making sure they have the tools they need to get that done should be our top priority.
And Mr. Brannon, do you support congestion pricing in its current form, or should the tolls be higher or lower or anything else?
I was admittedly an outer borough classic congestion pricing skeptic, and then it came into law and I saw that it was working, and now I'm on board. It changes behavior. You're seeing folks their commutes are being cut down, putting more people into public transportation, and it's great. I think it's working, and it's one of those things where, it's something that some people were dubious of, and now it's working, and I think it's fantastic.
Mr. Levine.
Well, congestion pricing has been a tremendous success. It has reduced congestion in the central business district. Local businesses have, in many cases, more foot traffic. Broadway attendance is up. Many restaurants report increased bookings. We've got money for desperately needed mass transit upgrades. This has been a successful program, as I knew it would be. That's why I supported it for years before implementation, and it was politically tough. I took a lot of hits for this. But I'm about standing up for good policy when it's easy and when it's hard. I'm proud to have done this on congestion pricing, as I have on so many other issues.
Mr. Levine, is there a past comptroller who would be the best model for you in the job?
There are things I admire about many past comptrollers, but I'm going to call out Liz Holtzman, who was comptroller in the early 90s, who pioneered the program of investing pension money to create affordable housing, and also stood up to prevent the construction of, I believe, 9 incinerators in neighborhoods across the city. She's been a great role model for me. She's taught me a lot, and I'm proud to have her endorsement in this race.
Mr. Brennan?
I would say Bill Thompson, just a steady hand, very thoughtful. I like the way that he would, I like the way that he went after the MTA, but I like the way that he would try to demystify government so that taxpayers understand that this is your money and you should care very much about how the city spends it, how the city handles it. So I would say Bill Thompson.
Okay, have you ever experienced food insecurity, Mr. Brannan?
Sure. I mean, in my days, you know, touring the world in a band, it was tough. I mean, it was a choice we made, obviously, to pursue our dream as musicians, but there were many nights where we were all, you know, sharing one order of white rice with duck sauce.
Mr. Levine.
I'm very fortunate. I know there are people who are struggling out there in the city today, and I have enough food, and I have. And it's why I fight very, very hard for the people who are suffering out there. Food insecurity is real in New York City, and we need to do more to address it.
Mr. Levine, what is something that your opponent has done well in their time in office?
He's got a mean Spotify playlist.
Mr. Brannan.
That's such a consultant answer. The right to counsel law that the borough president passed is great. The mayor hollowed it out, and unfortunately, the borough president didn't really speak up to get it refunded, but I like the plan. It's great.
Okay, given a choice, what borough would you live in outside of your home borough? Mr. Brannan.
Wow, that is a divisive question 14 days before the election. I would say Queens. I love Queens.
Mr. Levine.
I'm not going to tell you which of my wonderful sons is my favorite, and I'm not going to tell you which of the 5 boroughs I will move to.
So the next section is going to be about the city budget and your role as auditor of the city budget. But before we go to that, I want to ask both of you this. You seem to be agreeing with each other quite a bit on the issues, maybe disagreeing about who would be better at doing what you both want to do. But is there an issue that either of you could identify that you actually disagree with your opponent on? Mr. Brannan, do you want to start?
I haven't really thought that much about it. I spend my time, you know, running my campaign and putting forward my vision for a more affordable New York. I mean, look, the tabloids will tell you that rich people are fleeing New York City, but it's not true. Working families are fleeing the city because they can't afford to live here. And every day I feel like I hear from someone saying, I'm considering moving to a different city because it's easier to raise a family there, it's easier to start a business there, it's easier to buy a house there. We are hemorrhaging working families in this city. We need to do more about it. So I'm glad that just about everybody running citywide right now is laser focused on the affordability crisis. But I think the controller's office is going to, usually it's a sleepy office that you don't hear about until they uncover some sort of fraud or scandal. This needs to be an office that's aggressive, that steps up, that comes up with big, bold solutions by pushing every lever, pushing every button, exhausting every option, laser focused on making life easier for you and your family.
Mr. Levine, any issue differences?
Well, I think you've heard some disagreements tonight. Our history on congestion pricing, on City of Yes, on whether the city should own Israel bonds. But I think what distinguishes me is my record of seeing big problems in New York and organizing to win for New York City. I saw that many young people, when I was teaching in the South Bronx, came from families with no bank accounts and no credit cards. And so I organized to found a community credit union, inspired in part by the Central Brooklyn Federal Credit Union, that's now grown to make $100 million of investments uptown. As a council member in my first year of office, I saw an eviction crisis, 25,000 evictions a year at its peak. I saw fewer than 5% of attorneys, of tenants with attorneys, and virtually every landlord with one. I organized over 3 years against intense opposition from corporate landlords to win victory and give a right to an attorney to every tenant facing eviction in housing court. This is what I've done. I see big problems and I address them. I organize to win solutions for New York.
Just to clarify, because I know the topic is a hot button, you said you disagreed on Israel bonds. Did you disagree on Israel bonds?
No, we didn't. He just wants to disagree on it.
Well, then maybe we made some news here then.
All right, let's talk about the city budget. By far the largest expense is the public school system.
Sure.
About a third of the annual budget. Viewers and listeners might not know, about $40 billion a year on about 1 million kids, or more than $30,000 per year per child. Where would you look for waste, fraud, or abuse Mr. Levine, in the education system?
This issue is personal to me. As a former teacher, and my wife, Evelise, and I have raised 2 kids in the public schools. And what I see in the budget there upsets me. I see hundreds of $millions spent on outside consultants, money that should be directed to classrooms, to students, to teachers. And our teachers are trying so hard. Some of them are taking money out of their pockets to pay for supplies. So many parents are organizing to help their schools, raising money to close gaps. And we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in the central bureaucracy that should be redirected to classrooms. This is a problem throughout city government. We spend $17 billion a year on outside consultants for administrative functions, and we could trim that. Many of these contracts are redundant, or they're overpriced, or they're ineffective. This will be one of my top goals as comptroller, to rein in these outside contracts, to get the money where it's needed, including to our kids and teachers in classrooms.
Mr. Brown?
Sure, I worked in the Department of Education under Mayor de Blasio. I helped roll out UPK. It was one of the last big, beautiful things that the city of New York did. And I know firsthand from working at Tweed, in the belly of the beast, in the silo capital of the city, that $40 billion budget, I don't know a public school parent or a public school teacher who feels like their kid is getting a $40 billion educational outcome, or that their classroom is, outfitted to the tune of $40 billion. But it's not because we need to cut funding from the Department of Education. We have to audit it to reprioritize where money is getting spent. There's too much money being spent on educrats. There's too much money being spent on outside consultants, particularly IT consultants who are still fleecing the city and getting away with it. With a $40 billion Department of Education budget, our kids should be getting a world-class public school education. I was a public school kid. I learned 3 chords in public school, and that afforded me a career as a musician. I want every kid to have that opportunity, but we got to make sure we're spending our money right.
Okay, candidates, let's move on to an area where there are some notable expenses that the controller can affect. New York City has paid more than $750 million in police misconduct settlements over a 7-year period. That includes nearly $205 million paid out last year alone, the highest annual payout in years, according to the Legal Aid Society. The current controller, Brad Lander, wants to make every city agency financially liable for its own lawsuit payouts to help incentivize better behavior. The city's hospitals already do so. So my question is, should the NYPD pay for police misconduct and the Department of Sanitation for truck injuries and so forth? Do you see any risks or trade-offs in that approach? And we'll start with you, Mr. Brannon.
No, I mean, I don't think this money should come from taxpayers. It should come out of the budget of the agency. So it's something that I want to look at. You know, one of the things that we've been so frustrated by with the NYPD has been them just blowing by. They'll come and tell us we think we're going to spend about $200 million this year on overtime, and reliably they're spending over $1 billion on overtime. So we have to get real about that. I think Commissioner Tisch is doing a good job in identifying that, but I don't think the taxpayers should be footing that bill.
Okay. Mr. Levine.
This is one of the most important functions of the comptroller's office, overseeing the tort claims process when people sue the city. And every agency is getting sued, and the comptroller's negotiating agreements. The comptroller has an opportunity here to find patterns and get to the root causes. So if there is one sanitation route where there have been many people hit, heaven forbid, in suing the city, instead of just paying out, let's look at that sanitation route and fix the underlying problem to protect people and also save money for the city. But I would be careful about taking the money directly out of agency budgets. I would just want to make sure that it wasn't reducing essential services like trash pickup. And so while I would certainly look at this proposal, my goal is going to be to reduce lawsuits while preserving services. That's the balance I'll seek to achieve.
Okay. I want to ask you about contracts. The controller, of course, reviews city contracts in most, but not all cases, and has the ability to approve, send them back, or even reject them. So multiple city agencies are spending billions of dollars on homeless and migrant shelters, using often emergency contracts and also expanding use of hotels and other buildings. One of the shelter contracts is connected to a federal bribery case right now, and past audits and investigations have found embezzlement, padded billing, self-dealing, and much more. And this has gone on for years, and yet the corruption continues. So What will you do to change things, Mr. Levine?
This is also an extremely important function of the office. Every single contract must be reviewed and certified by the comptroller, and that is in part to root out waste. And there's real vulnerability with emergency contracts because many of the normal checks and balances in the process are suspended so that we can move quickly. And I want to commend Comptroller Lander for applying real scrutiny to some of the emergency contracts applied to shelters, including rejecting one of over $400 million to DOCCO because there was a lack of transparency. There were questions of whether we were getting our money's worth and potential improprieties. That's the job of the comptroller, to not just be a rubber stamp on contracts, but to review every single one to ensure that it's adhering to our law, to root out corruption, and I will do that aggressively as the next comptroller.
Mr. Brannon.
I mean, the Adams administration has used the fog of an emergency to basically give us Tammany Hall 2.0. DOCCO is getting checks written, $450 million checks like they're handing out candy on Halloween. Meanwhile, I've got thousands of nonprofits that are waiting to get paid back for work that they already did for the city. It often feels like the robust oversight is only reserved for those life-changing, life-saving nonprofits and not for these vendors who are fleecing taxpayers. So it's something we absolutely need to get a handle on. It's a big, big crisis in this city because our nonprofits are truly the unsung heroes of our city. They do life-saving work that the city entrusts them to do. But then when it's time to get paid, the city won't answer their call. And it's not a cash flow problem. The city has all the money it needs. It just needs to pay its damn bills on time. So while we're paying DOCCO $450 million and not blinking an eye, you've got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of nonprofits that are owed millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's got to change. It'll be one of my top priorities as controller.
Back to the pension funds. We talked earlier about what you might divest from. Now I want to ask you about what you might invest in. And in your last debate, Mr. Brennan, you first, I believe you both said you would use the city pension funds to invest in housing, where you get at least 7% as a return. Can either of you get specific about how you would do that, Mr. Brennan, first?
Sure. I mean, it's been done before, and it can be done again. And I think now more than ever, we need to do it, right? We've got almost a $300 billion pension system. So long as you can work in concert and cooperation with the trustees, because ultimately they're your partners here. The trustees need to get buy-in. You have to make the case that you can get at least a 7% return. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be financing the creation of more affordable housing. I also have a plan to invest in the creation of a universal child care system. It's a real estate investment. The pension funds invest in real estate now. There's no reason why we can't add a social good and a benefit to our city. Look, this is a moment when I think controllers across the country are going to have to get very creative. Make sure you're getting that 7% return investment, the stable, steady retirement that retirees deserve and they count on, and that's ultimately your #1 responsibility. But you have to leverage the power of an almost $300 billion pension system to make life easier, to invest in the city of New York, to put money back into the pockets of working families, because it's good for the economy and it's good for everybody.
But do you have your eye on any specific type of affordable housing to invest in?
I have a plan to create affordable housing for city workers, specifically for city workers. It's a plan on my website. It gets into the details, but it can be done. And I go back to the days of, I was a big fan of Dick Ravitch and the things that he was able to do, dreaming big, bringing people around a table. That's how we got Manhattan Plaza. That's how we got places like Electchester for union housing. We need to do more of that. We've got to get back into the business of dreaming big in the city of New York.
Mr. Levine.
Yeah. If you see a vacant lot in New York that's slated for housing and wonder why it takes years and years for something to be built there, the answer is probably because we don't have adequate financing. We have 300 sites all around the city that are waiting for affordable housing development, where the zoning's set, where the project's been approved, where the developer's ready to go. But it can be as long as 10 years before financing comes through because of the shortage of federal streams and more. So I put forward a plan. It was the first plan I put out in this campaign to take some of our pension money and invest it in a prudent way that will get good returns in jump-starting that kind of housing production. And our plan calls for mezzanine debt, convertible to equity, so that we weave that narrow path that gets good returns for our pension funds while giving access to financing that affordable housing builders might not otherwise have. And we calculate that this plan could produce as much as 70,000 homes for New Yorkers in need around the city.
As a follow-up, Mr. Levine, first, why should the pension funds be used for anything that can't produce the maximum rate of return? We all understand that affordable housing is needed, but you're running the pension funds and you don't want them to ever run short for the retirees. So why make that compromise?
Well, real estate should be part of a diverse investment portfolio, as it is for every pension fund in America. Historically, perhaps commercial real estate was seen as a safer investment, and that's no longer true. Actually, housing is a safer investment right now. So there's a possible win-win here. Well, we can invest in New York City. We can get housing built that might otherwise be delayed for years, giving affordable homes to people in need, but also producing good, stable returns for our retirees. That's the plan I put forward.
Mr. Brannan, same question.
Yeah, I think it's a smart investment. Investing in housing, leveraging the pension funds to invest in the creation of affordable housing and fast-tracking the financing of affordable housing is a win-win for our economy and for the future of New York. I mean, I hear from folks who are trying to get people to invest in real estate in the city of New York, and it's hard or impossible because they don't even see the city investing in itself. So as long as we're getting that 7% return, as long as you can get buy-in from the trustees, it's a win-win.
And your website, Mr. Brannan, also says combating climate change, which also costs money. What are you proposing and at what expense?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's a false choice, and I think the oil and gas companies have done a great job at making people believe that oil and gas investments are more stable and steady and reliable than investments in alternative energy. But it's just not true. Investing in alternative energy is a smart investment, not only for our pensions, but for our planet. And ultimately, we need to have a planet to enjoy our pensions on. So we need to be doubling down on our investments in alternative energy, especially now where the White House is doing everything they can to claw back environmental regulations.
Mr. Levine?
Well, this is the challenge of our time, and it's right that the pension fund should consider the business impacts of the shift to green technology. Solar is growing at an almost exponential rate. It is the industry of the future. It's good for our planet. It's also good business. These are the kinds of win-win investments I'll look for. Consistent with our values, in ways that also will yield good returns for the pension fund, and investing in green energy should be the priority. It will be mine as comptroller.
So in general, because we don't want the pension funds to ever run short for the retirees, just like we don't want that at the national level for Social Security, would either of you argue that you've got better ideas for investing the city's pension funds for maximum growth and stability than your opponent? Mr. Levine, you can go first on this one.
Well, look, we have a staff of 100 in the Bureau of Asset Management at the comptroller's office. We have very talented people that we hire to help make these investment decisions. The job of the comptroller is to provide vision. And I've outlined the vision here that prioritizes the safety and returns of the pension funds, but also prioritizes implementing investments consistent with our values. We can do those things. The comptroller, in consultation with the trustees, should do that. That's how you lead. That's how I will lead.
But nothing specific at the moment for something to invest in that would be really good that maybe they're not doing now or doing enough of.
Well, I've outlined several so far tonight. I've talked about investing in renewable energies like solar. I've talked about investing in affordable housing here in New York City. Those are good long-term investments, which I'll fight for as comptroller.
And Mr. Brannan, same question.
Yeah, my plan to invest in a universal child care system is something that's not happening now that I think we absolutely can do. We can get that 7% return or more, and we can set up something that would be an absolute game changer for the economy and for the workforce. I hear so many parents who are being pushed out of the city of New York because childcare is unaffordable and unattainable. It's a basic free market failure because what you have is providers who are saying they're getting paid peanuts and parents who are saying childcare is too expensive. That's where the government needs to step in and fix that because we're losing working families to too many other cities where they've figured this out. So I believe leveraging our pension funds, I have a plan to invest $500 million over 8 years to set up a universal child care system in the city of New York. And I think in this moment, it calls for big, bold ideas just like that.
Thank you both.
So our news organizations, WNYC, NY1, and the city, we asked our listeners, viewers, and readers to send in questions, and we heard from a lot of folks about Medicare Advantage, including from Sarah from Yorkville and many, many others. And so we wanted to ask about this planned switch to Medicare Advantage for city employees who are retired, which paid for raises for current city workers, but has also raised an uproar among retirees who say that it will provide reduced benefits to them and has so far been blocked in court. So as the steward of the city's finances, what would you recommend the next mayor do about the promised billions of dollars in healthcare cost savings tied to past union contracts, while also getting retired city workers the healthcare they were promised? So we'll start with you, Mr. Levine.
Well, this is actually an issue that the next comptroller might have a formal role on. Presumably, new contracts would come before the new comptroller's office for review and certification. And so I will make a decision on this based on the details of the plan in consultation with retirees, with current workers, with labor leaders, and more. But I have values, and I believe that retirees should have outstanding health care. I believe they should continue to have plans with zero premiums. And I'll fight to make sure that those values endure if I'm the next comptroller.
Mr. Brannon.
Medicare Advantage is a scam. It's a step away from the privatization of health care. Retirees, whatever health care plan you signed up for on the first day you started working, that is the retirement plan that you should retire with. The city of New York should not be balancing its budget on the backs of retirees, of folks who invested the best years of their life to the city of New York. I am a proud sponsor of Intro 1096. I would love for the borough president to join me as a sponsor, which effectively blocks Medicare Advantage. We have to have a serious conversation about the cost of health care in this city, in this country. The cost of hospitalization, the cost of prescription drugs is out of control as we are all living longer, which is a good thing. But we don't save money by screwing over retirees. Medicare Advantage is a bad deal. It's a scam. And the city of New York should back off of Medicare Advantage to protect our retirees because they invested in our city and gave us some of their best years.
Very quickly, Mr. Levine.
The council member became a sponsor of this bill a matter of days ago after resisting for years and years and years. This is an 11th hour conversion for purely political reasons. I'm about substance, and I'm going to make this decision based on the facts.
Mr. Brannon.
Borough presidents sponsor and introduce bills all the time. The borough president could sign on to Intro 1096 tonight if he'd like to, but he hasn't. So I stand up for retirees. I'm against Medicare Advantage. I don't know
why did you wait 3 years to get on the bill?
Why don't you sign on to the bill? Great.
Okay, candidates, we've got just a couple of minutes left, so we're going to hit you with a couple of lightning round questions, and please stick to yes or no. Mr. Levine, do you support putting a casino in the 5 boroughs?
Look, I'm really proud that I stood up in Hudson Yards. Well, I stood up against one in my borough already.
So that sounds like a no. Mr. Brannon.
Well, I don't think we have a choice because the state decided that we're going to get at least 1 or 2, so I guess they're coming.
Mr. Brannon, have you bought anything at one of the city's legal marijuana dispensaries?
No, I order online from Cheech and Chong.
Okay, Mr. Levine.
I did go to a grand opening of Con Bud and did pick up some product.
Mr. Brannon, despite your Working Families Party endorsement, you said in the last debate that you would support Andrew Cuomo if he's the Democratic nominee. But if he is the nominee, the Working Families Party might run its own candidate. Are you sure you wouldn't support that person?
We'd have to cross that bridge when it comes to it. I enjoy and really, it's very important to me to have the support of the Working Families Party, but I am a registered Democrat. But if that does happen, I'll revisit.
Mr. Levine, same question. You also said you would support Mr. Cuomo. Are you standing by that?
Well, I said that as a Democrat, as a proud Democrat, I will support the Democratic ticket. And that remains my position.
And on a lighter note, what was the last sporting event that you attended, Mr. Levine?
Let's see. I think I went to a Mets game, which unfortunately they did not win.
Mr. Brown.
St. John's at Madison Square Garden. It was glorious.
All right. Thank you very much, candidates. That's going to do it for this debate. We thank the candidates and our partners and all of those who are watching at home. If you missed any part of this debate, you can watch it in its entirety on NY1.com and on YouTube. Remember to tune in on Thursday at 7 p.m. when we will host a Democratic primary debate with the leading contenders for mayor. And remember, early voting begins this Saturday, and primary day is on June 24th. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great evening.